Hi, I'm Sydney, and I am a servant of the Almighty God. So, regardless of which religious doctrine you follow, a servant of the Almighty God is someone who believes in truth, honesty, and the brotherhood of mankind. We also believe that we exist in the presence of the living God. Today I want to talk about or dispel that old idea that we are the result of random events. Quite some time ago, I guess, as science developed, there were unanswered questions. And I guess it was expeditious to say, well, based on the recognizing evolution and not having all the answers, I think it was expeditious at that time to say, well, it's random. But random really says you can't affix rules that govern certain events or sequence of events. And that is a result of one of two things. Really, there may not be any rules, in which case it truly is random. Or, alternatively, it may be that we don't yet understand those rules. And I'll give you an example. The weather. Without meteorology, the weather can seem pretty random because, it's sunny, it's rainy, the temperatures change. A lot of this stuff, even within, it's like that saying, some places it says, if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes, it's going to change. Well, that can make things look random. But with study, with dedication, with knowledge, we can find out that, the weather is not random. It's because one of the key things is that once you understand the rules that govern something, you can predict. And so the ability to predict what may happen, even in the short term, days, weeks, that takes it out of the realm of being random. So there still are a lot of unanswered questions. And so when it comes to the elements around us, right, we have all these things. We have charcoal, we have gold, diamond, and all the old stories of trying to turn something into gold and all that stuff. Back then, that was the elements would have seemed pretty random. But with knowledge, we recognize now there is order. There is so much order that when we play, just by having the elements in this periodic table, it took a lot of knowledge to understand the underlying atomic weights, but we can also not just place them in this periodic table, but we can actually because it's not random, we were able to predict the characteristics of yet undiscovered elements. Because again, it says, okay, this it's going to be at this place by atomic weight, and these are the number of electrons in the various clouds, and the 2 and 8 and 18 and whatever. But you have these clouds, but that gives us the ability to predict what these elements would look like, their characteristics, even before they were discovered. And that all of these elements, even the things we use now, as we move into hopefully this green, trying to reverse some of the things of climate change and all of that stuff, those elements, we know that they existed prior to the time of the dinosaurs. They were there with the rules that go around them. So there was nothing random about that. When it comes to living organisms, we are finding out again as our knowledge expands, a lot of the things that we assumed were random, there are rules that govern them. And so our expanding knowledge is really about seeking to understand those rules. So, and ultimately, in the really big picture, it's really about understanding, learning the rules of creation. As an example, there are quite a lot of things that we yet don't understand. Like, that one of the things I like to refer to is, that the bees go out, they find food, they come back to the colony, and they do this little dance, and the other bees pick up on it. Okay, this is where, this is what we've learned. Again, our knowledge expands. We recognize, wow, these bees are actually indicating, and so far, we don't think that there are bees that go like, I don't get it. Because they know this, whatever, there is a mechanism of communication, and they all get it. It's the same thing. We have to recognize that because we don't yet understand the rules that govern, that does not make it random. And so some of the things that we don't yet understand, but obviously there are rules about them are, for instance, we have these poisonous animals, the poison frogs, we have that very deadly octopus, that little octopus that's so poisonous, and sea snakes and all these things. But these brightly colored, these deadly animals are normally brightly colored. Think about the intelligence, because it's either the animals themselves got together and says, hey, dude, you got to do something about yourself because we can't tell. Or the animal decided, well, I'm going to let you guys know. And so I'm going to tweak my genetic material. Think about that. The DNA, which has been around even before the dinosaurs, that animal had to have the intelligence to tweak away some of the genes and whatever the mechanism that I don't think we fully understand yet, what influences genes to react in such a way that it causes changes that we recognize as mutations. And these mutations then go on, and the ones that are best adapted to external conditions. See what I'm getting at? So there is an intelligence that basically directs these changes way down at a genetic level, maybe even lower. I don't think we have found that mechanism as yet, but we can tell that the fact that certain classes of animals are brightly colored, the poison frogs and the snake, and even the ones that do mimicry of the poisonous things, there are rules. Otherwise, we'd find a lot of this stuff everywhere. So we have these little classes, and that shows that there are rules governing that. Even now, with diseases, as our knowledge advances, diseases that seemed random, and they were placed in that realm of, being attacked by some extraterrestrial stuff or some spiritual stuff. We are finding the rules that govern those things. This is why, for instance, with mRNA and all of these things we're finding out, and our immune system, we're finding out there are rules. And these rules, once we discover what those rules are, we can become almost like masters. We can start manipulating these things, just like we do with light and sound. We can transform them, and we can store them in different, and then bring it, so my voice going out now gets converted into this digital media, and stored, and then it gets reconverted, and then it can go back into these sound vibrations so that you hear and you see, because we understand the rules. And so this whole concept of things being random is really based on lack of knowledge, ignorance. When we don't know, we say this is random. But as more and more rules become apparent to us, we need to go back and revisit that. We need to revisit that concept that things are just coming out of random stuff because there are rules, and those rules are the rules of creation. So we are becoming enlightened, and this is where, in my book, Humanity's Inflection Point, I talk about religions. From the scriptures, man took the scriptures and the commandments, which the commandments are the original rule of law that applies to everyone and no one's above it, and created these different religions. And religions have been so divisive, but the knowledge, the revelations from the Creator, that is uniting us, because no one debates. And the product of that, which, the cell phone, the screens, so people like Steve Jobs, who sought truth, knowledge was revealed. And that's an ongoing thing that should make us better. But all of this, especially if you look in the medical field, we see more and more as we look at these some of the most complex things, which includes us. There are rules for diseases and the cures, and this is where science has not revisited this concept of random, but we need to remove that and recognize what we are learning. It's the laws of creation, because there are rules that govern all of these, and it's simply the fact that we don't yet understand all these rules, but the ones that we do understand demonstrate absolutely that there is a pattern, there is rules that govern. It's the reason we can predict. Even with diseases, we say if you do this, and this is based on our knowledge of the last couple of 100 years. Imagine the Creator who's been from the beginning of time, eons ahead of us. And this is why in my book I talk about from the inspiration, just like people are inspired by to find those rules that govern the elements, and they can invent new things. Evolution itself, there is an intelligence. It's equivalent to our machine learning, but it's eons more advanced than anything that where we would have a database, and it would query the database and then add on its own based on experiences and the different senses that it would have. It would add that to the database, so it tends to be learning. Well, our Creator, billions of years ahead of us, has placed that type of intelligence not only in the bees and the fishes and the birds so that they can navigate, but He has placed it within our genome, within all things, so that autonomously they can, within the genes, they can start making the changes. That intelligence, which it's like life itself, we don't know that little light, that little switch that allows, enables genes to change, create mutations. That's His version of machine learning. And so what we need to do now is revisit and disregard, as we find rules, that this concept of us being the result of random events. I thank you for taking the time, and I will continue on with this. Pick up a copy of Humanity's Inflection Point. That's my latest book. Or there's also Understand, Improve, Self and Society. Thank you for taking the time, and until, God bless.